There is a moment most male cat owners have faced, but rarely wonder. He sits next to you, calm, present, almost intentional, and then, without reason, he leaves. Not because he's scared, not because something disturbed him, just leaves. And what's strange is not that he goes. It's that when he comes back, nothing about him suggests he was ever gone. So the question is unavoidable. If nothing changed for him, what exactly is realizing when he leaves you? Because this is where most people get it wrong. What looks like distance is often misread. What feels like inconsistency may actually be a very precise system. And once you see that system, something shifts. You stop asking why he disappears and start understanding why he never felt gone in the first place. But to see that clearly, you have to notice something subtle first. A behavior that almost every male cat shows right before he decides to walk away. The enigma of male cats. There is a particular way a male cat looks at you that feels slightly misaligned with the moment. Not distant, not absent, but as if his attention is split between you and something you cannot see. He can sit beside you for long stretches without asking for anything, without showing need, without performing affection in open ways. And then, without transition, he disappears. Not dramatically, not in protest, just gone. For hours, sometimes longer. And when he's back, there is no explanation in his behavior. No urgency to reconnect, no visible trace of where he has been or what he has done. He simply restarts, presence without narrative. From the outside, this pattern often reads as unpredictability. But what if it is not unpredictability at all? What if it is consistency, just not in a way humans are used to recognizing? These traits are often defined as contradictions, as if something in them doesn't quite align. But the truth is quieter than that. There is no contradiction, only a different structure of experience, one that doesn't revolve around constant emotional signaling, but around something more internal, more self-contained, and more stable than it first appears. In this episode, we are not trying to simplify the male cat. We are not trying to make him easier to understand. Instead, we are stepping closer to the way he actually exists, where behavior is not always expressive, where presence is not always interactive, and where connection does not always look like connection. What makes a male cat male? At first glance, the answer seems straightforward. Biology, hormones, testosterone shaping behavior in predictable ways, roaming, marking, competition, the drive to explore beyond boundaries. These elements are real, and they do influence how male cats move through the world. But they do not explain the full picture. Because what testosterone creates is not just action, it creates orientation. A subtle shift in how the cat relates to space, to uncertainty, and to control. An intact male does not simply react more. He anticipates more. He scans environments differently. He calculates distance, access, and possibility with a quiet consistency that often goes unnoticed. This is where misunderstanding often begins. Humans tend to interpret reduced outward behavior as a complete personality shift. But in reality, the internal framework persists. The male cat still operates with a sense of self that is not dependent on constant interaction. The difference is that now, without the hormonal pressure, that independence becomes less visible, more integrated, and often calmer. So biology sets the stage, but it does not write the entire script. Independent streak. There is a moment, subtle and easy to miss, when a male cat chooses not to follow you. Not because he didn't notice you leaving the room, not because he isn't interested, but because, in that moment, staying where he is makes more sense to him than moving with you. This is often interpreted as indifference, but it is something else entirely. It is a form of self-containment. Male cats tend to relate to space differently. They do not experience proximity as a requirement for connection. They can remain in a separate room, engaged in their own stillness, without feeling that something is missing. Their sense of attachment does not weaken with distance in the same way human expectations assume it should. This is not emotional absence. It is emotional stability that does not depend on constant reinforcement. In the wild, this orientation had a function. Covering larger territories, navigating uncertainty alone, making decisions without relying on a group. These patterns shaped a kind of mental structure where solitude was not a threat, but a normal state. And even in a home environment, that structure remains. So when a male cat sits quietly instead of seeking you out, when he watches instead of engaging, when he chooses distance without tension, it is not rejection. It is alignment with a system that does not require constant confirmation to remain intact. Play, power, and physical expression. If independence is the still side of the male cat, then play is the movement that reveals what sits underneath it. Male cats, particularly in early life, often engage in play that appears more physical, more forceful, and more sustained. Wrestling, chasing, pouncing. Not as isolated bursts, but as extended sequences that seem to carry a different kind of intensity. But this is not random energy. It is rehearsal. Through play, male cats explore boundaries. Not just physical ones, but relational ones. How far can pressure go before resistance appears? How quickly can control be established, lost, and regained? These interactions are not just about movement. They are about testing systems of dominance, response, and adaptability. As they grow, this tendency doesn't disappear, transforms. An adult male cat may no longer engage in constant rough play, but the underlying readiness remains. You see it in the way he approaches objects, in how he calculates a jump, in how he commits fully to a movement once he has decided. There is less hesitation, less fragmentation between decision and action. This often gives the impression of confidence, even boldness. But it is not emotional bravado. It is structural certainty, an alignment between perception and response that feels seamless from the outside. So the stillness and the intensity are not opposites. They are parts of the same system, one that alternates between conservation and expression with very little transition in between. The quiet bond. Perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of male cats is the nature of their attachment. Because it does not always look like attachment. There are no constant check-ins, no need to maintain proximity, no visible anxiety when separation occurs. But over time, something else becomes clear. A pattern of presence that is not loud, but consistent. He chooses certain spaces when you are there, not always next to you, but near enough to remain aware. He adjusts his resting points in subtle ways that align with your movement. He responds, not always immediately, not always visibly, but with a reliability that only becomes noticeable when you look for it. This is not dependency. It is recognition. A male cat does not attach in a way that dissolves his independence. He attaches in a way that incorporates you into his structure without losing himself in the process. And because of that, the bond can feel quieter, less demanding, and at times, almost invisible. But it is there, not in constant gestures, but in repeated, understated choices that accumulate over time into something stable, something real, and something that does not need to announce itself to exist. Territory and invisible structure. To understand a male cat fully, you have to look at something that is rarely visible. The way he maps space. A room to a human is static, defined by walls, furniture, and function. But to a male cat, space is layered. It has zones, pathways, vantage points, and areas of control that are constantly being updated. When he moves through a home, he is not wandering randomly. He is maintaining a structure. What we often miss. The difficulty in understanding male cats does not come from complexity alone. It comes from mismatch. We expect signals where there is stability. We expect continuity where there is precision. We expect visible emotion where there is internal alignment. And because of that, we often overlook what is actually happening. A male cat is not distant in the way we assume. He is simply not organized around the same need for expression. His world is quieter, more self-contained, and less dependent on constant interaction, but not less meaningful. If anything, it is more deliberate. So the next time he sits in silence instead of approaching, the next time he leaves without explanation, or returns without ceremony, it may not be unpredictability you're seeing. It may be a system that is already complete.